now, Jake Weigler is with us. He's the director of Our Shot Oregon and a partner with Praxix Political. OurShotOregan.com is the website. Jake's Twitter handle is Jake Weigler, W-E-I-G-L-E-R. Jake, welcome to the program, or Our Shot Oregon, also on Twitter. Jake, welcome to the program. Tell us about in fact, let me back up a little bit. What provoked you to start the group to basically out politicians in Oregon who are spreading vaccine disinformation and COVID disinformation?
Well, thank you, Tom. We've done some work in our political space. I'm a consultant, so I work on a variety of issues, including a lot of public health issues, have worked on vaccines previously to the pandemic, as well as gun violence prevention. And it's not a unique phenomenon where the vast majority of the public agrees that science and evidence is how we should approach these questions, but you get a very recalcitrant vocal minority that tends to dominate the conversation. They tend to get most of the media coverage. And then there's this very destructive symbiotic relationship between that group of folks and conservative politicians and media outlets that like to feed that narrative. And so I think we've seen a dynamic that's played out for the last several months where we kind of knew that those folks were out there. It was no shock that they were very skeptical of vaccines, actively hostile to social distancing, masking, the other preventative measures we need to take. But we just kind of figured that they were going to do what they're going to do, and hopefully it wasn't going to impact us. And I really saw, and my team as well, over the course of this summer, particularly with the Delta variant, that this was going to be a make or break dynamic for us ending this pandemic, that people refusing to get vaccines, refusing to do the other public health measures we need to do to stop the spread was going to allow for this resurgence and all these unnecessary deaths. And we said we can do something about it. And I felt like there was a moment that we could capture where the public was really seeing the connections between people having these values and politicians encouraging them to take on these positions and be more vocal about them, and trying to interrupt that process and saying that there should be actually consequences when you are taking anti-science, anti-public health, and you're quite literally killing people. And so we decided to create this movement.
Give me for example.
Provide a banner. Yeah. Well, I think there's an example we put on our website. You may remember last November, before we even had a vaccine, the only step we've had was to take social distancing, and keep our circle small, our bubble small, to protect ourselves and the larger community from spread. And we had a county commissioner here in Oregon who said, well, I'm going to have Thanksgiving and I'm inviting as many people as I can to it, and then got a platform on the Tucker Carlson show, which then, of course, as the evidence is really showing, Fox News is a major driver of this misinformation and this resistance that has emerged, and that person get a lot of kudos. And so that if there's from those corners, and so that if we don't have a movement out there that can provide some negative reinforcement or call them out on it, they're going to continue to double down on that. And unfortunately, I think that's been a dynamic in conservative and Republican politics for decades, whether it's, demonizing LGBTQ people or immigrants or a variety of other targets. They pick someone and said, these people are evil. They're trying to destroy our way of life. It's your job to stand up to them. And until you can flip the political calculus and realize, yeah, I'm talking to 25% of people that love what I'm saying, but the other 75% are getting incredibly turned off by this, they keep doubling down and engaging in that behavior. So our hope is that this is a start of changing.
So here in Oregon, we have some politicians and basically the entire Republican Party, but which is a nationwide problem. And you mentioned, this is a minority. That's true here in Oregon. It's not a minority in Montana, though, or in Idaho, which is melting down right now, and they're trying to ship, dying COVID patients into our Portland hospitals, or into our Oregon hospitals. But you've identified these politicians. What do you do? Tell our listeners how Our Shot Oregon, SHOT, like, getting a vaccine, presumably, OurShotOregan.com, what are you doing? How are you responding to these politicians who are telling lies about vaccines or promoting, bad and risky behavior? And what kind of response have you gotten up to this point from them or from the public?
Well, it was interesting. When we first launched, they asked a bunch of them for comment, and they ducked comment, which to me was indication that we were onto something here. If they knew they'd actually have to defend their approach, and they were refusing to do so, I think they recognized that maybe there's some risks here. And I'll just say Our Shot, yes, it's absolutely about vaccines, but we're also big Hamilton fans. And so we wanted to make a point of, we're not going to miss our shot here to end this pandemic. And that's, I think, really what's motivating us. We're a grassroots movement. I've heard the one Republican that did respond, the Senate Republicans were like, this is a shadowy front group for the leftist cabal. And I was like, I wish it was. I wish they were sending us a bunch of resources so we could really mix things up.
You mean George Soros is not pouring money down into your checking account?
I have not heard from George yet, but maybe he's watching the show. Maybe he's going to get out in touch.
You never know.
We would be happy to take it. I know, it's no problem. Literally, I think, we make jokes about it, but thousands of people are dying unnecessarily because of these tactics and these antics. And it's really one of our biggest challenges is to try to keep people engaged and not take ourselves too seriously, but also realize that the stakes here are really high.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of what we're trying to do, I think what we're trying to think about as we gain supporters and resources is how we signal back to these politicians that this is not playing well back at home, on the ground. And that could be, putting up some billboards that expose their kind of behavior. I know they think that they love this stuff, but I think that's mainly because it's recycled through the right-wing media. So the only people that are actually hearing it are their base, as well as showing grassroots support. And I analogize to whether it's gun violence prevention or LGBTQ or other kinds of equality issues in our history, or even going back, to segregation. I think, I remember when I was in school, hearing that what really was a changing dynamic in the South was that there was assumption among a lot of white people of, all my neighbors must think the same way. They must really hate black people. And then over time realizing, no, actually, a lot of us do feel differently. And then getting to that critical mass to change that dynamic. And unfortunately, as you said, that's harder in kind of red America right now. But I think that's our job, is to start chipping away at that and building a platform. Because right now, the leaders that would naturally be focused on this are so immersed in the day-to-day response to this pandemic that they don't have the capacity and time to think about how do we create a proactive movement to counterbalance this. And so that's where we said we have some skills we can apply in this situation.
So would you, if you go to ourshotoregan.com, your headline is "Delusional Politicians Are Killing Us." Is what you're trying to do here basically? You've got heroes and villains, right? Is it name and shame? Is it change behavior? All of the above? And do you know of any other groups around the country? There's 50 states here. You and I are just talking about Oregon, that are emulating what you're doing.
I have not seen anybody, and we were joking that it'd be great if we had to franchise into Our Shot Idaho and Our Shot Montana. So if folks are interested, they should come to the website. This is a new idea we hashed a couple weeks ago. And we'd love to find partners outside of Oregon as well. I think there are a lot of people working on the ground to try and deal with vaccine hesitancy and shift public attitudes. And I commend that work. I think it's critically important, particularly, among BIPOC communities, which we know have had some skepticism in different parts of those communities around kind of the healthcare system and certainly the history of vaccinations in this country. But I think we saw that there was a complementary piece, which, as I mentioned, was that our certain elected officials and their counterparts in kind of the Republican media and right-wing media, they are really the ones broadcasting these messages and telling people on the ground, you should go to that school board meeting and protest, or you should disrupt a public meeting or public setting. And so that if they continue to get that positive reinforcement from leaders, they're going to engage in that behavior because they're getting permission and encouragement to engage in those tactics. And so that unless we go after that dynamic, which frankly I think a lot of times is bad faith. You look at these evidence from Fox News, everyone there's vaccinated. There was some reports from their newsroom that came out this last week. You saw everyone was wearing a mask. So I think, a lot of this is political theater. We can get into some speculation about their motives for doing so, but I think really trying to change the dynamics of why those folks are engaging in these kind of call outs and encouraging this kind of behavior, that's where we thought we could fit in.
Is there any possible explanation for this? We're talking with Jake Weigler, the director of OurShotOregan.com and a partner with Praxix Political. Is there any possible explanation for this kind of behavior on the part of Republican politicians other than that they want chaos to reign so that Joe Biden and Democrats who are in charge now appear to be at the best impotent and at the worst, fumbling idiots, and that basically death is their political strategy for 2022 and 2024?
Well, I think we could get into a longer discussion about kind of what does bad faith argumentation mean.
We have 30 seconds now.
Looking at Mitch McConnell this week, it's certainly, become part and parcel of how they approach the work. To my mind, a lot of it is a grift, that it's a chance for them to gain money, gain supporters, gain attention, and the consequences be damned. And so I think it has a lot more to do with them seeing a political opportunity to kind of build their clout. And certainly that has come from the top on down for the last several years. And until we accept that that's the dynamic and figure out our counterpoint, I think it's, at our peril, because we come to the conversation's presumption of everyone's in this together. We're all trying to work out the common good and do what's necessary. Unfortunately, other people are playing off a different playbook right now.
Yeah, I get it. Jake Weigler, OurShotOregan.com, is the website. And hey, start one in your own state. Contact Jake about how to do it. Jake, thanks a lot for dropping by. It's great talking with you.